15. Black celebrities who underwent gender transition. You've seen their faces, admired their talent. But what if we told you the world almost never gave them a chance to exist? These black celebrities were born into a reality that denied their truth, yet they defied every barrier to become icons of courage and transformation. This isn't just about fame, it's about survival, identity, and rewriting history. What you're about to discover will shock you, inspire you, and leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence and hit that bell because these are the stories that deserve to be heard. Miss Major Griffin Gracie. Born in the 1940s in Chicago. Miss Major Griffin Gracie has spent her entire life defying systems that tried to erase her. As a black transgender woman who came of age in an era that offered her no protection, Miss Major not only survived, but rose to become one of the most powerful voices for incarcerated trans women in American history. Her story is not one of stardom in the traditional sense, but of revolutionary leadership forged through unimaginable adversity. Her path to activism began in the shadows. As a young person living authentically long before transgender was a widely recognized term, she faced violent backlash simply for existing. She was expelled from her home, excluded from jobs, and eventually forced into sex work to survive. Like many transgender women of color during the 1960s and 1970s, Miss Major was funneled into the prison system, a place that became both her torment and her calling. Miss Major was present during the 1969 Stonewall Uprising, a night often hailed as the genesis of the modern LGBTQ+ rights movement. But while history books often center white gay men in the narrative, it was trans women like Miss Major who put their lives on the line. She bore witness to the rage, resistance, and consequences of standing up in a world that deemed her disposable. Her time in Attica Correctional Facility proved to be a turning point. There, she endured abuse, dehumanization, and relentless discrimination. But it was also in those dark corridors that she began organizing, listening, comforting, and building solidarity among other incarcerated trans women. This experience ignited a lifelong mission to fight for those the world chose not to see. As the former executive director of the TGI Justice Project in San Francisco, Miss Major has worked tirelessly to provide support for trans women of color navigating the prison system. Whether it's food, clothing, medical access, or just someone to say you matter, Miss Major shows up. But her power goes far beyond advocacy work. With a disarming sense of humor and a heart overflowing with compassion, she has become a maternal figure to an entire generation of black trans women seeking guidance and belonging. In a society that often reduces transgender people to statistics or headlines, Miss Major reminds us that every life is a story, and every story deserves dignity. Miss Major Griffin Gracie didn't seek fame, she sought justice. And in doing so, she became a legend. Dominique Jackson. Dominique Jackson was born in 1975 in the island nation of Tobago, a place steeped in beauty, but also bound by deeply entrenched views on gender and sexuality. From a young age, Dominique knew she was different, but her truth was met with harsh rejection. Her own family cast her out, and the church community that once nurtured her became a place of judgment and fear. Alone and afraid, she fled to the United States as a teenager desperate for a fresh start, only to find a new set of challenges waiting for her. Landing in New York, she battled the bitter cold and hunger while navigating life without support or resources. She experienced homelessness, hunger, and exploitation. Yet she never let those hardships define her. Instead, she found an unexpected refuge in the underground ballroom scene, an electrifying world where queer and trans people of color created their own families, values, and stages. In this realm of voguing fashion and fierce competition, Dominique discovered her voice, her power, and her chosen family. She became a revered figure in ballroom culture, eventually earning the title of Mother within the house of Miyake Mugler. But she wasn't just a performer, she was a mentor and a guide. Her towering presence, commanding poise, and unapologetic femininity made her an icon within the community long before she ever reached the screen. Dominique's breakout came when she was cast as Electra Abundance in FX's groundbreaking series Pose. Her performance was more than just acting, it was lived experience channeled into every commanding scene. Through Electra, Dominique brought the ballroom world and the struggles of Black trans women to the mainstream, giving a voice to those who had long been overlooked. Beyond acting, she is a vocal advocate for trans rights, racial justice, and body autonomy. She has spoken at global forums, including the United Nations, highlighting the intersections of race, gender, and displacement. She uses her platform to uplift other trans women of color and to confront the systems that nearly destroyed her. Dominique Jackson's journey from exile to empowerment is a testament to perseverance. Her story proves that even when cast aside by the world, one can rise not just to survive, but to reign. Angelica Ross. Angelica Ross was born in 1980 in Kenosha, Wisconsin, a town where conservatism ran deep and conformity was the expected norm. From childhood, Angelica knew she didn't fit into the narrow mold carved out for her. Her gender identity made her a target of ridicule, bullying, and eventually abandonment. At just 17, her family turned their backs on her, leaving her with no home and nowhere to turn. For years, Angelica struggled to find stability. She drifted between jobs trying to survive while hiding who she truly was. Her early 20s were marked by despair, sleepless nights, and a gnawing loneliness that threatened to consume her. Yet within the depths of that isolation, she found something powerful, a determination to not only live, but to thrive. With no formal training, Angelica taught herself how to code. This skill became a lifeline. It allowed her to step into the tech world, an industry known for its exclusivity, and carve a space for herself. In 2014, she founded Trans Tech Social Enterprises, an organization devoted to empowering transgender individuals through education and employment in technology. Her mission was clear: economic independence equals freedom. Angelica's talents didn't stop there. She soon stepped into the spotlight as an actress, landing high-profile roles in Pose and American Horror Story. Her performances were sharp, nuanced, and deeply personal. Each role was an act of resistance against Hollywood's history of erasing or misrepresenting trans lives. In 2022, Angelica made history as the first openly transgender woman to play the iconic role of Roxy Hart in Chicago on Broadway. Her debut received thunderous applause, not just for her vocal talent and commanding stage presence, but for the milestone it represented in theatrical history. Angelica Ross is more than a performer or entrepreneur. She is a visionary who turned rejection into opportunity and silence into advocacy. Her legacy is still unfolding, but one thing is certain: she has redefined what it means to lead with both purpose and pride. Peppermint. Peppermint, born in 1979 in Pennsylvania, grew up in a world where the idea of a Black transgender pop performer was almost unimaginable. From a young age, she felt the world didn't reflect who she was, and the mirror often echoed the world's rejection. As she navigated her early years of transition during the early 2000s, society's understanding of transgender identity was limited at best and hostile at worst. Facing both racism and transphobia, Peppermint found herself locked out of traditional opportunities. She turned to New York's nightlife scene, where she began performing in clubs and drag venues, not only to entertain, but to survive. These weren't glamorous gigs. Many times she sang through jeers, endured slurs, and left with more emotional bruises than cash. But the stage became her weapon. It was where she fought to be seen, to be respected, to claim space in a world built to exclude her. Her rise to national attention came in 2017, when she became the first openly transgender woman to compete on RuPaul's Drag Race from the start of the season. Throughout the competition, she didn't just dazzle with her charisma and talent, she educated millions about trans experiences, challenging perceptions within the LGBTQ+ community itself. Her vulnerability and strength struck a chord far beyond reality TV. In 2018, Peppermint made Broadway history by starring in Head Over Heels, becoming the first out transgender woman to originate a principal role in a musical. This wasn't just a personal milestone, it was a monumental shift in representation on the most elite theatrical stage in the world. Her presence on Broadway reminded audiences that trans women could not only perform but lead. Offstage, Peppermint has been an unwavering advocate for racial justice, LGBTQ+ rights, and HIV awareness. She's used her platform to call out tokenism in media and advocate for authentic trans voices in entertainment and policymaking. Peppermint's journey is a vivid reminder that success for trans artists is not just about talent. It's about resilience, visibility, and an unwillingness to shrink. Laverne Cox. Born in 1972 in Mobile, Alabama. Laverne Cox's journey to global recognition began in a place where her identity was met with deep suspicion and scorn. Raised in a religious conservative community, she was relentlessly bullied throughout her childhood, not just by peers, but within her own household. Her mother, concerned about societal backlash, initially rejected Laverne's truth, a wound that left lasting scars. Despite the emotional weight of rejection, Laverne sought refuge in the arts. She studied classical dance and later pursued acting at Marymount Manhattan College in New York City. Even as she honed her craft, she was often overlooked for roles facing not only racial bias, but an overwhelming lack of understanding about transgender identities. The door to mainstream success remained tightly shut, but Laverne never stopped knocking. Her breakthrough came in 2013 with the Netflix original series Orange is the New Black, where she played Sophia Bursay, a transgender inmate, struggling to maintain her dignity behind bars. It wasn't just a role, it was a revolution. Laverne became the first openly transgender person to be nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award in an acting category. With that nomination, she shattered a barrier Hollywood had long ignored. The visibility Laverne brought to the trans community reached far beyond television. In 2014, she made history again as the first transgender person to appear on the cover of Time magazine. Her cover story, titled "The Transgender Tipping Point," was more than a headline, it was a cultural turning point. Laverne had become a national figure, not just for her talent, but for her advocacy and courage. Beyond the spotlight, she has used her platform to educate and fight. From college campuses to Capitol Hill, she's spoken about gender justice, trans healthcare, and the intersection of race and gender identity. Her documentary work, including Disclosure on Netflix, peels back the harmful portrayals of trans people in media history. Perhaps the most profound moment in her personal journey came when her once-rejecting mother proudly embraced her daughter in public. That healing was not just personal, it became symbolic of what acceptance can mean for millions. Laverne Cox is not just a Hollywood figure. She is a cultural pioneer who redefined visibility for an entire generation. T.S. Madison. T.S. Madison, born in 1977 in Miami, Florida, carved her legacy not by conforming to Hollywood standards, but by creating her own. As a Black transgender woman navigating the early 2000s, she found herself excluded from traditional entertainment spaces. Lacking opportunities and support, she turned to adult entertainment to earn a living, an industry that both empowered her financially and stigmatized her publicly. Despite the judgment, Madison refused to hide. In 2013, her raw confidence and humor exploded onto the internet with the viral video New Weave 22 Inches, which showcased her personality in full, unfiltered form. While many dismissed it as a fleeting moment, she seized it as a launchpad. Madison quickly evolved from meme to mogul, building a devoted following and leveraging her newfound attention to speak candidly about gender, race, and economic survival. She used digital platforms not just to entertain, but to educate. Her charisma turned every live stream into a masterclass on authenticity, resilience, and entrepreneurship. Madison wasn't asking for acceptance, she was demanding respect. In 2021, she made history by producing and starring in The T.S. Madison Experience on WE tv, becoming the first Black transgender woman to lead and executive produce her own reality television series. It wasn't just a show, it was a cultural statement. Madison allowed cameras into her life, capturing the challenges and triumphs of building an empire while mentoring a team made up largely of LGBTQ+ individuals. Beyond the screen, Madison has become an outspoken advocate for trans rights and racial equity. She has appeared alongside stars like Beyoncé and RuPaul, participated in panels with activists, and challenged media outlets to better represent trans voices. Her activism is never detached. It's grounded in lived experience, delivered with her signature blend of humor and hard truths. T.S. Madison is more than an entertainer. She's a blueprint for self-made success. From viral sensation to television trailblazer, she redefined what visibility looks like on her own terms. Janet Mock. Janet Mock's life began in Honolulu, Hawaii in 1983, surrounded by ocean views but submerged in emotional turmoil. Born into a broken home, she was raised by a single mother, moving frequently and often caught between poverty and instability. From an early age, she felt the dissonance between her body and her identity. By her early teens, she began her transition, an intensely private process funded through sex work during her adolescence, an act of survival in a world that offered her no safety net. At 18, Janet flew to Thailand to undergo gender-affirming surgery, a decision she made with clarity and conviction. But physical transformation was just one chapter in her much deeper evolution. Rather than bury her past, she chose to confront it with vulnerability and truth. Janet rose to prominence with her 2014 memoir, Redefining Realness, a searingly honest account of her life as a young Black trans woman. The book was groundbreaking not just for its content, but for who wrote it. For the first time, a trans woman of color was telling her own story in her own words with mainstream reach. The book became a bestseller and ushered Janet into the national spotlight as both an author and a cultural commentator. She broke even more barriers in television. As a writer, director, and producer for Pose, Janet Mock became the first transgender woman of color to sign an overall deal with a major studio, Netflix, 2019. Her work on Pose wasn't just behind the scenes. It shaped the show's soul-delivering narratives rooted in real experiences of love loss and resistance in New York's Black and Latinx LGBTQ+ communities. Beyond media, Janet has spoken at universities, testified in political forums, and advocated for laws to protect trans youth and sex workers. She insists on being seen not as a symbol of struggle, but of brilliance. Janet Mock is not only a survivor of impossible circumstances, she is a master of her own narrative. Her courage to tell the whole truth has shifted culture and redefined what it means to live in one's authenticity. Brian Michael Smith. Brian Michael Smith was born in 1983 in Ann Arbor, Michigan, a city that offered little guidance to a young Black child grappling with gender identity. From an early age, Brian knew something about him didn't align with societal expectations, but there wasn't a name or a blueprint for what he felt. He threw himself into sports, excelling in football and track, seeking belonging in a world that only saw him through one rigid lens. For years, he lived stealthily, presenting as female, while internally feeling the weight of disconnect. In his early 20s, Brian began his transition, a deeply personal journey marked by self-discovery therapy and an unrelenting desire to live honestly. But his aspiration went beyond identity. He wanted to act. And not just act, he wanted to be seen, heard, and represented in a way that shattered every stereotype Hollywood had long clung to. He began taking small roles, often uncredited or minor, while teaching and coaching on the side. In 2015, he made his television debut as a transgender police officer on Blue Bloods, a groundbreaking moment that showed audiences and casting directors that a trans man could play nuanced, everyday characters. But it was Queen Sugar, created by Ava DuVernay and Oprah Winfrey, that became his breakthrough. His recurring role as Twan Wilkins, a trans man and police officer, was subtle, layered, and deeply human. Brian's portrayal refused sensationalism. It offered representation rooted in dignity. He made history again when he joined 911 Lone Star as Paul Strickland, becoming the first black transgender man cast in a major network television series as a series regular. Unlike past roles that made gender identity the storyline, Brian's character was defined by courage, integrity, and complexity. Outside of acting, Brian is a vocal advocate for LGBTQ+ inclusion in media and sports. He challenges networks, schools, and athletic associations to protect trans youth and promote accurate representation. His message is clear. Being a man isn't about fitting a mold, it's about showing up with truth and strength. Brian Michael Smith isn't just transforming roles, he's transforming culture. Alexandra Gray. Alexandra Gray's journey began in 1991 in Chicago, Illinois. But the world she was born into didn't feel safe. Abandoned by her biological family and raised in the foster care system, Alexandra's early years were turbulent. As a black transgender child without support, she faced immense instability. By the time she was a teenager, she had cycled through multiple foster homes, often hiding her identity just to survive. When she aged out of the system at 17, she was suddenly on her own, homeless, vulnerable, and unsure of what came next. With no family, no guidance, and no money, she turned to singing on street corners, using her voice as both currency and comfort. She had always dreamed of becoming a performer, but the road was anything but glamorous. Determined to make something of herself, Alexandra moved to Los Angeles. She worked day jobs and attended community college later, earning a degree from California State University, Northridge. There she began to blossom, performing in student productions, building confidence, and embracing her identity. Her big break came with guest roles in Transparent Code Black and Chicago Med. But it was her portrayal of Eliza Parks in Empire that made viewers take notice. Alexandra brought raw emotion to every line, drawing from her own lived experience. Her characters were never defined by tragedy alone. They were full, breathing people with dreams, flaws, and strength. She went on to star in shows like How to Get Away with Murder, Drunk History, and MacGyver, continually expanding the public's understanding of what a transgender actress could do. Her presence on screen marked a seismic shift. She wasn't cast to make a political point, she was cast because she was undeniably talented. Off-screen, Alexandra is an outspoken advocate for trans youth and foster care reform. She visits shelters and schools, sharing her story to remind young people that they are not alone and that where you start doesn't have to dictate where you end. Alexandra Gray's rise isn't just a success story. It's a testament to endurance, artistry, and the unshakable belief that you can turn pain into purpose. Today she stands as a force in Hollywood, not just surviving, but soaring. Michaela J. Rodriguez. Born in Newark, New Jersey in 1991. Michaela J. Rodriguez grew up knowing that the person she saw in the mirror didn't align with how the world viewed her. Assigned male at birth, Michaela discovered early on that her heart, voice, and identity existed in a different space, one that required extraordinary courage to claim. She found her outlet through performance, studying musical theater at the Berklee College of Music, and later at Pace University, where her talent began to shine. Michaela came out as transgender in her early 20s, during a time when the industry offered very few opportunities to openly trans women, especially women of color. She began her physical transition in 2012 and temporarily stepped away from the stage to fully embrace her identity. But once she returned, she did so with power and grace, determined to be seen for who she truly was. Her breakout role came with FX's groundbreaking drama Pose, where she portrayed Blanca Evangelista, a nurturing yet fierce housemother in the New York ballroom scene of the 1980s and 90s. The role not only won over audiences, but made history. In 2021, Michaela became the first transgender actress to win a Golden Globe, marking a monumental shift in the entertainment industry's recognition of trans talent. Off-screen, Michaela has used her voice to advocate for gender equality, racial justice, and authentic representation. She frequently speaks out on the challenges trans youth face, particularly those in underserved communities. Her visibility isn't just about accolades, it's about opening doors for the next generation. In addition to television, Michaela has returned to her musical roots, performing in stage productions and releasing her own music. Her artistry is vibrant, emotional, and undeniably bold, reflecting the very essence of who she is. Michaela J. Rodriguez is not just a performer. She's a cultural touchstone, proving that authenticity is a superpower. Every role she inhabits, every award she earns is a brick in the foundation for a more inclusive future. Amia Scott. Amia Scott was born in 1988 in New Orleans, Louisiana, a city rich in culture but slow to embrace gender diversity. By the age of 17, she began her gender transition, a courageous decision that placed her on a path both empowering and perilous. Growing up in the Deep South meant navigating a maze of misunderstanding, intolerance, and personal risk, especially for a young Black trans woman. But Amia chose authenticity over safety. She wasn't interested in simply surviving, she was determined to live out loud. Long before trans visibility became a trending topic, Amia was using social media to express herself and educate others. Her magnetic presence online earned her a loyal following, particularly among young LGBTQ+ people searching for affirmation. Unlike traditional celebrities who rose through casting calls, Amia built her brand from the ground up, modeling bold looks, discussing trans issues, and refusing to be sidelined. In 2015, she made headlines as the first openly transgender woman ever cast on a Real Housewives franchise. Real Housewives of Atlanta, though she ultimately declined to appear in the series. Still, that moment cracked the door open and she was ready to walk through. Her biggest leap came when she was cast as Cotton in Lee Daniels' Fox drama Star. As one of the first trans actresses to play a major trans character on network television, Amia broke new ground. Her portrayal of Cotton was raw, layered, and unflinching, bringing visibility to the realities many trans women face, from navigating complicated family dynamics to fighting for basic dignity. Beyond acting and modeling, Amia uses her platform for advocacy. She speaks on self-love, mental health, and the importance of seeing trans people not just as survivors, but as leaders, creators, and whole human beings. Amia Scott didn't wait for permission to be great. She claimed it. With every post, every appearance, and every performance, she reminds the world that no identity should ever be hidden, and no dream is too bold for a Black trans woman to chase. Gia Banks. Gia Banks is more than a dancer. She's a living monument to the resilience of Black transgender women in America's underground ballroom culture. Emerging from the shadows of adversity, she became a fierce mother figure, a cultural architect, and a beacon of stability for those pushed to the margins. Gia's early life was marked by struggle. Born into poverty and surrounded by instability, she lacked the basic resources so many take for granted. As a young trans woman of color, her journey was defined by both invisibility and hypervisibility, ignored by institutions, yet targeted by cruelty. With no safety net and no roadmap, Gia found herself navigating rejection from family and community, bouncing between couches and shelters while trying to hold on to hope. At 19, she stepped into her first ballroom. The world she entered was electric, a defiant and flamboyant sanctuary for Black and Latinx queer youth who had nowhere else to go. There, Gia didn't just perform, she bloomed. Her grace, confidence, and motherly energy quickly earned her a revered position within the scene. As a house mother, Gia didn't just lead on the floor, she provided emotional guidance, housing support, and even legal referrals for her children. But her impact didn't stop at glitter and gowns. Gia has worked behind the scenes to connect transgender youth to vital resources like hormone therapy, gender-affirming healthcare, and housing security. In a world that often turns its back, Gia stepped in as the embrace. She has since appeared on reality competition shows like Legendary, introducing a wider audience to the art form she helped shape. While the bright lights captured her performances, the real story was always in her community work, quietly paying rent for a struggling house member attending a court date or simply showing up when no one else would. Gia Banks isn't famous because she chased celebrity, she's revered because she built a legacy of care culture and defiance. In every step, she carries a generation with her. Maya Taylor. Maya Taylor's journey to cinematic acclaim began not in drama school, but on the sidewalks of Los Angeles, where she once wandered with nowhere to sleep and no clear path forward. Born in 1991 in Houston, Texas, Maya came out as transgender in her teens, a declaration that cost her family stability and safety. With few options, she fled to California hoping for freedom, but encountering homelessness and survival sex work instead. In 2013, fate intervened. While sitting in a Los Angeles LGBTQ+ center, she met director Sean Baker, who was casting for a low-budget film about trans sex workers in Hollywood. He offered her a chance to audition. That film became Tangerine, a raw, unfiltered story shot entirely on iPhones, starring Maya and fellow trans actress Kitana Kiki Rodriguez. Tangerine wasn't just a breakout, it was a revolution. The film premiered at Sundance and was praised for its authenticity and emotional depth. Maya's performance was celebrated for its vulnerability and humor, refusing to caricature trans women and instead showing their full humanity. In 2016, she made history as the first openly transgender actress to win a Gotham Independent Film Award. Unlike many Hollywood narratives that tokenize trans characters, Maya's work challenged conventions. She became a vocal advocate for trans representation in film, not just in front of the camera, but behind it. She spoke openly about her struggles, demanding better pay and more substantial roles for trans performers. Despite the accolades, Maya never lost sight of her roots. She continues to advocate for housing security, safer work conditions, and healthcare access for trans people, especially those still navigating the kinds of hardships she once lived. Her fame didn't come overnight, and it didn't come easy. But Maya Taylor turned a chance encounter into a moment of history. She showed that talent can be found anywhere, even in someone the world tried to forget. Monroe Bergdorf. Monroe Bergdorf was born in 1987 in Essex, England, a mixed-race trans woman growing up in a country that rarely made space for either part of her identity. As a child, she felt like an outsider in her own skin and in society. The media didn't reflect her, and the people around her often didn't understand her. That isolation would later become the fuel for her transformation, not just physically, but ideologically. During her university years, Monroe began her gender transition. At the time, transgender visibility in the UK was minimal and often hostile. Yet Monroe pressed forward, entering the world of fashion and nightlife, not just to survive, but to shine. With striking beauty and an unflinching sense of self, she began to gain traction in modeling, becoming one of the first trans women to be recognized in high-profile UK campaigns. In 2017, she was chosen as the face of L'Oréal UK's True Match Diversity campaign. Her inclusion was historic. Never before had the brand embraced a transgender model for a national advertisement. But just days after her appointment, controversy erupted when a Facebook post resurfaced in which Monroe criticized systemic racism. L'Oréal swiftly cut ties with her, sparking global outrage and igniting a crucial conversation about the performative nature of corporate diversity. Rather than retreat, Monroe doubled down. She became a powerful advocate not just for trans rights, but for racial justice, gender equity, and online safety. Through speeches, interviews, and activism, she dismantled the sanitized version of inclusion that had tried to silence her. In 2021, she published her debut book, Transitional and Unfiltered Memoir about Identity, Intersectionality, and the Radical Act of Becoming Yourself. Monroe has since worked with the UN, political organizations, and global brands, always demanding authenticity over aesthetics. Her presence is a challenge to systems of power that commodify diversity while excluding its most vulnerable voices. Monroe Bergdorf is not just a model, she's a movement. She's proof that beauty, when paired with integrity, can be revolutionary. C.C. MacDonald, C.C. MacDonald never asked to be a symbol, but in the face of violence and injustice, she became one. Born in 1989 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, C.C. grew up like many trans women of color, unseen, unprotected, and underestimated. She faced rejection from both society and her own family. But even as a teenager, she carried a sense of resilience that would later make her name known across the world. In 2011, C.C. was walking with friends when she was viciously attacked by a group of white men outside a bar. The assault was brutal and laced with racist and transphobic slurs. In the struggle to defend herself, one of her assailants was fatally stabbed. Despite being the victim, C.C. was arrested, charged with manslaughter, and sentenced to 41 months in a men's prison. Her incarceration ignited outrage. Activists, celebrities, and civil rights groups rallied around her case, pointing to the double standard of justice for Black trans women. Behind bars, C.C. faced harassment, solitary confinement, and institutional abuse. But instead of being broken, she emerged stronger, using her time to reflect and to plan for the fight ahead. Following her release in 2014, C.C. transformed personal trauma into public advocacy. She began speaking at universities and conferences, shedding light on the intersection of race, gender, and incarceration. Her story became the focus of the 2016 documentary Free C.C., produced by Laverne Cox, which offered an unflinching look at how trans women are criminalized simply for surviving. C.C.'s activism goes beyond storytelling. She champions prison abolition, community-based support systems, and the urgent need to protect trans people from systemic violence. Her work is not centered on victimhood, but on resistance and liberation. To this day, C.C. MacDonald remains one of the most important voices in the fight for trans justice. Her legacy isn't just about surviving a broken system, it's about tearing that system down and building something better in its place. These 15 remarkable individuals shattered not only expectations, but the very walls built to keep them out. From prison cells to Broadway lights, from rejection to global applause, they've shown the world that gender identity is not a limitation, it's a revolution. Their stories challenge everything we think we know about fame, struggle, and resilience. At Legends of Black Excellence, we honor those who rise against all odds. So now we ask you, which of these stories moved you the most? And why do you think so many trans voices remain unheard in mainstream media? Let's open the conversation.